Well, usually they are fierce competitors, but now Apple, Google, and Facebook are uniting to protest to the federal government. 8 big technology companies joining forces to call for limits on government surveillance. This after revelations of aggressive data collection by the NSA. Fox Business correspondent Jolene Kent is here with more. Joe.
That's right, John. The world's most famous tech companies have publicly banded together to push President Obama and members of Congress, saying they strongly believe current laws and practices about surveillance need to be changed. AOL, Apple, Facebook, Google, LinkedIn, Microsoft, Twitter, and Yahoo created the Reform Government Surveillance Coalition. Said in a joint letter, "We understand that governments have a duty to protect their citizens, but this summer's revelations highlighted the urgent need to reform government surveillance practices worldwide." The letter goes on to read, "The balance in many countries has tipped too far in favor of the state and away from the rights of the individual, rights that are enshrined in our Constitution. This undermines the freedoms we all cherish." CEOs including Twitter's Dick Costolo, Marissa Mayer of Yahoo, Facebook's Mark Zuckerberg, and Google CEO Larry Page put forth 5 clear goals they want to accomplish on this website, calling on governments to limit surveillance to specific users, not to collect data in bulk, and they ask that companies have the right to publish what the government demands from them, how much it asks for, and how often. This call for change comes at the same time as reports reveal that American and British spies are using popular video games like World of Warcraft and Second Life to conduct surveillance and gather data about millions of people around the world. Intelligence operatives become avatars like elves and gnomes and supermodels, and they also use it to recruit potential informers. This was revealed by the New York Times, ProPublica, and The Guardian, thanks to leaked documents from former NSA contractor Edward Snowden. Back to you.
Jolene Kent. Thanks.
If you were a spy, you'd be a supermodel, right, John? An avatar? Would that be your choice?
I'm sure I'd pick something like that.
Or an elf.
Yeah.
It was an interesting story in the New York Times today. We're going to bring in cybersecurity expert who raised some red flags about the safety of the Obamacare website, David Kennedy. He's the president and CEO of Trusted Sec. So, David, first, let's just start really big and broad here. Is the biggest threat to our personal security online the government, or is it private companies who we willingly give a lot of data to?
Well, I think it's both. I mean, privacy is a major concern for everybody right now, and we do give a lot of our information to private corporations. But what we're seeing here is that not only just the federal government, but also the local law enforcement areas also have the ability to kind of survey us in a lot of our areas and track us as well.
Okay, let's focus a little bit about that, because that was also a big story today. Tower dumps, what are they?
So the way tower dumps work is there's a couple of techniques. One is obtaining, the call records that someone goes and uses on a normal phone. They can grab all the information from cell towers that end up going through those cellular communications. The second one is a technique which is basically called man in the middle, which allows you to intercept information from the cell towers and have the equipment there actually act as a cell tower itself, so you can intercept and grab all the communications like GPS data, SMS, and your call logs as well.
So, let's just use one scenario. Jessica Ridgway was a little girl who was kidnapped, and the police, the local law enforcement in the area, did a tower dump, and apparently they collected tens of thousands of data points from 5 different cell towers in the hope of trying to find this little girl. What would they, if I was in that area, I'm not connected to the case, what would they see of my personal data?
They would see everything that you did on your phone in those local cell tower areas. They would see everybody you called during those specific periods of time, timestamp data, which means the time that you actually made those calls, possibly SMS data or your text messages, GPS locations. All of those can be triangulated and grabbed from those cell towers in a tower dump.
So law enforcement says, listen, this actually helped us. In this particular case for this little girl, it did indirectly help them find the suspect, and the FBI says it's particularly helpful in bank robbery cases as well. So is it worth it, I guess, is the question then, if they're not really snooping into my phone number, but they're finding the bad guys out there? Is that the cost?
I think there's a fine balance. I think that there needs to be some major oversight in this. All of this can be done without a warrant, which means that they can go out and they can pull as much information as they want to with little rhyme or reason to why they need to do it. And I think that's the major concern. It's not that we shouldn't give law enforcement the adequate tools to be able to do their job and find the bad guys, but it needs to be done in a way that doesn't expose privacy concerns around American people, and that can be done, in a general perspective. I mean, if you looked at what happened with the NSA, they had individuals working inside the NSA that were looking at cheating spouses and things like that that had nothing to do with government security. And that's the major concern that we have here is what are they doing to have any type of oversight to ensure that our personal information isn't at risk, and not just the bad guys itself.
And for example, in that one case of Jessica Ridgway, 150,000 numbers were collected, just to give folks an idea of what's involved in just one case. Where does the private company come in here then, David, and how do you see that role changing with private consumers? Will I be turning to my private company to give them even more of my personal data so that I trust them in protecting me, or is there a way that I can protect myself as a single individual?
Well, if you look at what's happening with the collective of Microsoft, Google, and others, I mean, they're taking the government threat very seriously. But Google, notoriously, 5 or 6 years ago made the claim that, information that you give to us is basically open and it should be indexed, searched, all of those other areas. So you have to be really cognizant of what type of information you actually put online. Things like Gmail, other ones, they have the ability to look at that information. Microsoft actually came out recently with their Outlook.com instance and said, we don't look at any of your information. We're really trying to step up our security measures to protect against eavesdropping with the government. But still, it really comes back to making sure what type of information you post online is kept on your computer only, and really try to protect that type of information, keep it encrypted, and make sure that you have safeguards.
Do you think it's already, Pandora's box is already opened, that already we're past that point to take some of our private information back? It's a scary thought, but are we already at that tipping point?
I think we are, but I think that there's things that we could do from here on out. I don't think we can go back and fix the information that we put on there because, it's already out there. The stories that came out with the Edward Snowden links that they had the ability to crack some of the most, commercial-grade encryption and look at any type of information that they want to, or getting access to the back-end Google data center infrastructure and those communications. I mean, Pandora's box is already open. There's little legislature or anything that protects us when it comes to our online information, even as U.S. citizens. And we're in a weird position where, corporate companies inside the United States are fighting back our own government to not steal our own information. So, we are past that point, but there's things that we can do from here on out, and there's a lot of us in the security industry that are trying to come up with new ways of protecting our information from here on out because it's going to be a big deal in the future.
Well, David, next time you're on the show, we want to go through all your personal devices.
You got it, absolutely.
And find out what you do, as someone that's in the business. I know you have your own security company, but
absolutely,
it'd be really interesting to see how you operate on a daily basis. It's great to have you back on the program.
Love to.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Take care.